This episode was brought to you by Google Cloud, a partner that needs no introduction. What you might not have heard of, though, is that Google offers a Google for Startups cloud program where they give you access to startup experts, technical training, business support, and cover your Google Cloud costs up to $200,000 for 2 years, or even $350,000 if you're an AI startup. Scale your startup faster and smarter with Google Cloud. Head over to goo.gle/Swisspreneur.
Ultimately, everything you do as an entrepreneur has maybe a higher purpose, helping the next generation, whatever. And that's definitely something which, at least in my case, became more visible since I have a family.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Tobias, Marc, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have both of you on the show again, but this time, first time together. You're both successful serial entrepreneurs, probably one of the most known ones here in Switzerland. And today I want to talk to you about the blueprint, how you tackle, discover, and then also build new ventures in new topics. I want to start with you, Tobias. Currently, you're working together with Marc at Maximon, the longevity company builder. And it seems that if you look at your CV, that you have an impressive track record of identifying promising projects and then building a success out of it. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I'm happy about the assessment, yeah. You never know whether something is successful at the beginning. But what I can say is that I try to identify topics where I'm really interested intrinsically, where I learn something early on. And I think this led then to now several times the possibility of building a company maybe a bit ahead of the curve in a new topic.
Mm-hmm. And Marc, we already had a previous session with you where we talked about your success stories of Ausgang.ch and Amiando, both very successful companies and exits. What have you learned from these two stories, from these two journeys?
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit similar to what Tobias said, that if you have a own intrinsic motivation to change something in a way which also is maybe beneficial for you as a potential own target customer, I think you bring the passion and stamina it needs to really become also successful, right? So I wouldn't be interested in doing or starting a business which is just interesting from a pure market analysis and, let's say, consulting perspective. Mm-hmm. So I always need my own conviction to move into a field.
Yeah. And you have a history, a track record of working together successfully at Suzy Partners in the crypto space, now at Maximon. What makes you a good team? Maybe starting with your perspective first, Tobias.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we are friends, so that helps of working together. Yeah. And I think we are very different and with working together now for, 14 years or something like that, you probably get to know each other quite well. Mm-hmm. And you know what strengths and weaknesses we both have. And I think what worked very well in the past is that we can use the different strengths we have. So it's not that we are always very good at the very same thing, but we really, I think we know each other well enough that we now can work and say, that's something you will take care of, that's something I will take care of, and that has worked well, and it's fun.
That's probably a very important aspect. What are your different skill sets, Marc? What do you bring? What brings Tobias to the table?
Complementary, and I mean, for example, at Suzy, I was not really...
Complementary was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, not really involved. I mean, that was completely Tobias running it, and I was just supporting in the beginning. But I mean, there it was a completely different setup, right? I mean, now being together in an operational role from day one is also something new for us, I would say. Yeah. But yeah, as Tobias said, it's maybe knowing each other business-wise and private-wise, and then also know the weaknesses and the strength, and then ideally, using everybody in the the way which is the most beneficial for the companies. That's maybe one of the main ingredients we have, which doesn't automatically mean that you always know what's going to happen, but at least you have a certain history. And I think it also helps that we didn't really have the traditional way of starting a company as co-founders and then after, I don't know, many years doing something again. Mm-hmm. So it was maybe a more private and personal relationship in the beginning, because I think there are advantages and disadvantages of only being founders. And if you have both, I think you have an additional perspective.
And being friends and doing business together, is that also something that can be challenging sometimes? Because you think, hey, if we do this or that, that can also jeopardize the friendship? Or is it really more of a source of strength to have both business and friendship together?
I think in our case so far it was more a source of strength. But again, based on we know each other for more than 10 years, there are so probably not so many surprises or so. However, I once built a company together with my ex-girlfriend, and it says it all, ex-girlfriend, so that didn't go that well because we focused so much on the company. Yes, honestly, I'm not sure whether it's always a recipe for success. I think in our case, as we said, it's good fun. But yeah, that's something everybody has to find out by themselves. There is definitely a certain risk because, yeah, with every company you go through difficult times. It's not that it's always just pure, great, fast everything. There will be stressful times, and that is always testing then a partnership, a friendship. Yeah.
And let's talk about your blueprint, so to speak. I mentioned before you have a successful history in investing, in crypto, in now longevity. How do you identify and then also decide to tackle a new topic, Marc?
I mean, it's mainly coming first out of personal interest, right? So I think everybody literally starting something in a very early phase normally has a personal interest in, identify, as Tobias said, trends maybe a little bit earlier than others, or just, for me, it's always about understanding how the future could look like. So that's something I'm far more interested in, understanding what's happening today or maybe what happened yesterday. Yeah. And then based on that, maybe also identify where there is a business opportunity, because just by maybe realizing how the world could look like in 20 years from now doesn't automatically mean that you can build today a business out of it. And I think that was, at least in my case, always a little bit the driving force when I started my first internet company in 1999, or then Bitcoin in the early days, and now longevity. I was always personally very interested, but I also thought now it's the ideal timing and right moment to start something to make a sustainable long-term business out of it.
And talking about timing, Tobias, can you tell us a bit more how you went into the topic of longevity? How did that happen? What were the discussions and maybe the thoughts and decisions you had to take to then actually go all in on that topic?
I heard the first time about longevity in 2016, which I think really was early, considering that the real kickoff of longevity research was probably 2013 with the publication of a paper called The Hallmarks of Aging in the Cell magazine. And after this, a lot of institutes around the world and labs have been built. And so I was at Singularity University in 2016, and that's when I heard about this new idea of understanding aging as a sickness, and then basically all the other sicknesses like cancer, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer, Parkinson, diabetes type 2 are then more symptoms of the sickness aging. So this was for me the wow moment. I was like, okay, never thought that you could look at it like this, and aging is not just a given, you can do something against. Yeah. And unfortunately, I was fascinated by the topic, but I didn't have any time because I was building Susie Partners and then simultaneously Crypto Finance Group and Singularity Group. So very busy. So the idea was a bit parked. And in 2020, I think Marc and I had a discussion on what's the next big thing. Crypto is flying. What next? And then we said, okay, longevity, that was interesting. And then we started digging in, talking to scientists and trying to map this whole industry. which showed us how much potential there is.
You mentioned, Marc, the business potential. How did you assess that business potential behind a topic that was also personally interesting for both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I got in touch with the topic back in 2009 when I met Aubrey de Grey, but that back then it was before these hallmarks of aging, and it is more a little bit like a futuristic topic of, I mean, as he claims to live maybe forever or for 1,000 years or whatever. Yeah. But since then I followed the topic, and then, we literally saw that science is backing some of the theses, and that you have also now serious people moving into this space. And that's normally the moment where it's also becoming relevant from a business perspective. No. I was still mainly interested from a personal perspective, and then Tobias came up with the idea to organize a conference in this field, attracting investors similar to the one in the crypto space in St. Moritz. And that was literally also for me the first moment where I really realized, hey, it's more than just something I'm interested personally. No. And then, after the first event, we then had the idea of launching something more than just the event. And that was literally the birth of Maximon.
And that first event actually was quite funny because we said, this was COVID times. Yeah. So we had to do it online. And we had great speakers from David Sinclair to Aubrey de Grey. Everybody was there at this first edition. And Marc and I decided that we start with a fireside chat. And to have a fireside chat, I was lighting a fire in my new house. It was the first time I lit a fire it's a library with a nice fireplace. And so, there was this nice fire, and then we went live. And then we realized, the fumes or the smoke doesn't really go through the chimney, it goes in the room. Yeah. But we were live. We had 300 people watching us. Yeah. It was you try not to cough too often, but it really was uncomfortable.
That probably wasn't that helpful on your personal longevity journey.
And at least the audience realized it was not just like normally everybody has today, an artificial fireplace, right? So it was a real one with all the advantages and disadvantages.
Exactly.
Right?
Was this conference, so to speak, also a bit your MVP to really test, is the interest in that space big enough?
Look, I tell you a bit the idea of the conference. And as Marc mentioned, we have done the same thing with crypto, the Crypto Finance Conference in St. Moritz, which we initiated as a platform to promote other crypto initiatives like the Crypto Finance Group or Swiss Realcoin at that time. If you organize a conference, you get to know everybody in the space very fast, and everybody gets to know you very fast. And as an outsider, which we were, or at least I was in crypto in 2017 and in 2020 in longevity, it is needed to get your network up and running very fast. And so building this conference is a lot of work, but I think it pays off. Not maybe very financial. I mean, yes, you make some money, but it's not super scalable. Right. But the interesting thing is really you build the platform. And I think what went extremely well with Maximon is we built the ecosystem of longevity in no time. I would say Maximon is known in the longevity space like almost nobody else. So we have a global network. We have access to all scientists, and with that conference that worked very, very well.
How do you then, nobody knows you, how do you then get these big names that you had already at the first conference to join? How do you do that?
You do a cold call. Right. And then, of course, you tell them, look, guys, that's the Crypto Finance Conference. We send you a video. And I mean, Crypto Finance Conference is a super cool event. Yeah, it's like 5-star hotel, firework, and so on, so to say. And then you tell them, look, this is what we did in crypto. Now we're going to do this in longevity. And there it's about timing again. If you now come and you say, hey, we do a longevity conference, I mean, there is now 5 or 6 who copy us, even in Switzerland, and they have no real chance. Now, of course, they will get 1 or 2 speakers, but everybody knows our conference in Gstaad, and that's the real one. And so if you're early in this sector, you introduce a new level of how shall I say, a level of excellence, because the conference we did both in crypto and now in longevity are top notch. It's in really nice 5-star hotels. It's in the Swiss Alps, secluded. And I think for the scientists back in 2020, this was something completely new. Because the science conferences, they're normally held in 4-star business hotels in the outskirts of a town, and food is miserable. And the evening program is you sit in a pub. and we brought it to the real 5-star level, and really nice. And so we invited those speakers as well. We said, hey, we fly you in business class from wherever you come, because we want you to be present there. And I think now for many scientists, it's an honor to be asked speaking at our conference.
Of course, yeah. You really had this first mover advantage to be there at the right time, basically.
Yeah, that was true. Yeah.
And I think it also helps to really have a different audience, because they're great scientific conferences, right? Maybe in a different setup, but that's maybe also how they are normally organized. But we, for the first time, I would say, really brought the big guys at the table, right? Also to show that it's more than just the existing community. You can bring people. I mean, we had many quite well-known individuals who for the first time ever really digged into the topic, right? And that's maybe also something we want to achieve with our other activities, that we meet many people and they literally tell us, I mean, yesterday we had an event at the Swiss Private Bank, and for the first time ever they understand that longevity is on the one side something serious, it's science, it's not science fiction, and on the other side it's also a huge investment opportunity, right? So we see each other also a little bit as a bridge from the lab to the, let's say, real traditional world. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So now you had the conference, and this sort of serves as your platform, as you said before, Tobias. What do you then do with that platform? Because you want to have investments, you want to have companies. What do you do once you have the platform?
Look, we bring scientists, investors, and entrepreneurs together. That's the sense of it. And of course, I mean, what we always did is we said these conference must be independent. It's an own company. It's not owned by Maximon, as well as Crypto Finance Conference was not owned by Crypto Finance Group, separate entities. And why is that? Because we want to attract people not to by our marketing show, but by the topic. That's why we invite even competitors. And our approach is, hey, we invite everybody. We have the feeling we are the best. So it's absolutely fine to invite everybody else too. Whether that is true or not is a different thing. Yeah. And so people come because of the topic. And of course, we use the platform to introduce our ventures in the case of Maximon as well.
Sure.
And you know, our ventures at the beginning, they are financed by us, but in a Series A, we need to attract venture capital, external investors. So it's very cool also for our companies to be there.
And there you have the right investors who could then potentially make such an investment in your companies.
People who come to that conference apparently have an interest for longevity. Yeah. So you don't lose too much effort by addressing 10,000 people who are only 100 are interested. You have the 100 who are interested there, and then you need to convince them. Yeah?
Exactly. So I see this platform is really emerging. At the same time, you have companies that obviously come out of your company build, out of Maximon. And there you have other people building these companies. How do you incentivize them? I guess this is probably one of the key parts to make sure you're all rowing in the same direction and you also all sort of participate in case this becomes a success. So how do you get the incentives right?
Yeah, I mean, on the one side, again, I think it helps that we both and also our other partners already built and exited several companies successfully, because then it's not just a theoretical idea how we should and could incentivize our founders in our companies. So we know as founders ourselves what are literally the most relevant triggers to be incentivized. And that's why we have a quite straightforward model. As a venture studio, we have literally out of the 100%, 25% goes to Maximon, 25% to our co-investment fund, and 50% to the founders and the team. Yeah. And in exchange, they get up to 10 million and all the support and network and ourselves involved in the company, which I think is at least also in this specific time frame a very appealing offer, what we also hear from the market. And then, I mean, that's the financial part. And then I think it's also relevant to understand that in the beginning, we are part of the team, right? So we help them literally with making the hands dirty as well. Yeah. And in addition, we also put them in the spotlight. I mean, ultimately, I always say if people know us and Maximon, that's great. But even more important is the fact that people should know our founders, our products and services in our underlying companies, because there we create value. Yeah. And I think that's maybe also something many founders really appreciate, that they, on the one hand, get us and our network, but on the other hand, they can maybe in a quite accelerated way become successful founders themselves. And when we see in our group at the moment, we have a few first-time entrepreneurs, and literally in a matter of 6 to 12 months, they're already quite well known on a global scale in this whole longevity industry. And that's a little bit maybe what we bring on the table, which is not normally the case if you have pure investors involved.
And you have to see, I mean, we work mostly together with scientists as founders. And I think for a scientist, building a company is not so easy as if you have studied business or so, or you had exposure to that, startup environment and so on. And what we really do is, as Marc said, we keep the back free for them. So they focus on the product, they focus on reducing time to market, and we take care at the beginning of finance, legal, IT, HR, and always on a professional level. So if you build a company with us, from day one, you have a perfect setup when it comes to your finance and bookkeeping, auditing, all of that. We have 3 people in HR, so we help you finding your staff and your co-founders as well. And by the fact, Marc mentioned it, that we are really operational co-founders. We work with these founders together. I think that's maybe the most important point. We avoid compromises on team quality, because this is something what happens very often. If you are a scientific founder and you need a head of marketing, well, not many of your friends are marketing guys. Most of your friends are bioscience guys.
Of course, yeah.
And so where do you find this head of marketing? Well, maybe you find him or her at a conference or in the evening in a bar, and you're like, wow, super marketing, perfect, let's do it. A, you don't know whether this is a good marketing person because you cannot compare.
Of course.
And B, maybe the first evening or the first week looks very good. But then, I mean, it's like a marriage if you want to build a company, even more intense. And you don't want to get too married with a partner you only know for a day or a week. Yeah. And so a lot of mistakes happen there. And what we say is, you know what? Yes, you need co-founders, but until you find them, we temporarily become your co-founders. Marc might become your head of marketing. Tobias might become your COO for the next 6 to 12 months. And in this time with our HR, we find perfect co-founders for you, where we have enough time to test them, to get to know them, and so on. I mean, mind you, still then mistakes happen. And we also had to exchange CEOs in the past already. Yeah. But at least I think the chance that the team really functions is better.
Are these sort of services that you offer there, with the CFO service, with the HR service, are these like centralized services that you offer to all your portfolio companies?
Yeah, that's to all the companies, and they don't have to pay for it. That's already paid for by the shares we take. So we don't take liquidity out of the companies.
Yeah. And anything else that you centralize despite HR and CFO?
Yeah, IT. All these fancy tools, be it Basecamp or Pipedrive, if you need a CRM, and it's just there. What else do we have? I mean, we offer office space if people need it. It's very different. Now, some companies are really virtual. Some others come 3 days a week to the office.
Yeah, and then the whole communication, marketing, PR side. I mean, naturally, we have, even before we launched Maximon, quite a nice network of journalists all over the world. Now, specifically in the longevity investment space, right? So from day one, there's an established network we can use for all our ventures. And finally, that's also something we see when you have normally a researcher. That's nothing they're normally used to be on the spotlight. So also there we help, again, because we think we should have the founders of our underlying companies becoming the faces of the companies they're running. So there, I think they also appreciate the support we can give from day one, right?
Got it. This episode is brought to you by SMZ, your independent go-to partner in all matters relating to finance, insurance, real estate, tax and law for both private and corporate clients. To find out more, go to smz.ch. SMZ, tailor-made, holistic for you. And then I wonder, after these 6 to 12 months, when you find the operational team or the potential co-founders to the scientists, you then also have to move on to a certain degree. And I wonder, how do you operate the whole company builder in that space? How do you keep track of things? How do you make sure that you focus your time on the right things, basically.
So look, Maximon is a relatively big setup. So we have 15 people, 6 partners, and 9 full-time employees. Each partner is kind of the godfather of one company. Yeah. And so, yes, you're right. At the beginning, you're super operational, but then you move more to the strategic role, to the board role, but still you check in very frequently. I mean, at least weekly, maybe daily. Yeah. You check the numbers, you know the thresholds. We have standardized reporting about all the startups. So I still think we are far more involved than just a board member. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you the sales data of Avea from yesterday. So this is the degree of involvement we want to have.
But then you do have to strike for a balance, right? You want to be
the operational responsibility we hand over, I would say, within the first 12 months, normally. But as I said, in one company now, after 2 years, we were not happy with the speed of things. We kicked out the top management and stepped in ourselves again. Yeah. And I think this is the big advantage you have as a company builder, because we didn't have to step in the company not really knowing what's going on. We knew that company. We co-founded it. Yeah. We just realized that we handed operational leadership over maybe too early to not capable management, and we had to take control back.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Marc, I also wonder about the business model behind all of this. Tobias mentioned before the conference, sure, you make a little bit of money, but that's not the key revenue driver. Is it more then on the investment / the fund part, or the companies that you're actually building, or what is sort of the business model behind all of this?
Yeah, I mean, as Tobias said, the conference is literally separate, right? Yeah. I mean, it's in our ecosystem, but it's not really a Maximon-owned company. So at Maximon, it's quite straightforward. We are substantial shareholders of all our ventures. So that's the sweat equity we get. So no fees or payments in between. So our only and fully aligned incentive with all the ventures is literally to increase the value of our companies, and then at a certain stage, hopefully also get a multiplier of our investment back. Yeah. So it's a fully aligned entrepreneurial upside oriented structure, which also means that to a certain extent we have to pre-finance the first phase, because as you can imagine, at the beginning there is no revenue stream. But that's maybe again from an entrepreneurial perspective something you structure a little bit differently than a traditional VC who maybe has the necessity to get revenue from day one, right? Yeah.
So it is mainly you who invest the first chunk of money in this company, your private money.
It's our private money. Yeah? So we as the partnership invested 10 million in the fund. The fund now has luckily a bit more. And with the fund, we finance the startup companies up to a Series A with up to 10 million per company. Yeah. Now, Maximon itself, of course, also needs financing because, as Marc said, our business model is selling companies maybe in 6 to 10 years. Yeah. But until then, we get a management fee, which is not high enough to cover our cost. So you could see Maximon as like a little bit of family office run by 6 partners, where we also finance ourselves, and where I mean, I didn't get a salary in the last 3 years because it doesn't make sense to pay in money and then pay out the salary. But the long-term upside is our motivation.
Got it. Really entrepreneurial in that
regard. It is, all through. I mean, that's the alignment of interest between the founders, Maximon as the company builder, and our co-investment fund, so investors, is perfect. We are all in to make shares of these companies more valuable before we exit it.
Very clear. And I wonder, when is it time for you to move on to a different topic? I mean, you've successfully proven that when you moved from the crypto space to the longevity space. How did you manage that transition to say, hey, now we're good here, we have probably great teams or even exits, and now it's time to move to a new topic? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, I would say for the foreseen future, longevity is my or our topic, right? Because we're still very early. So I think many exciting things ahead of us. And I mean, in the whole crypto and Bitcoin space, I'm still following the developments because many of the theses we had a few years back are now materializing, right? So it's not something which is now just completed. But as I said, from an entrepreneur perspective, you have to have a focus. And I'm interested in many things like all the space businesses and other elements which are relevant in the future, let's say in the long-term future. But for me, at least for the foreseen future, it's definitely now longevity, which is the core and by far main topic. And there are so many things you can explore and as an entrepreneur also shape. So that's why I think at least at this stage, it's definitely not boring and the right moment to move on to something else.
Yeah, and one big difference is the following. So in the past, both Marc and I, we built our companies. And what at least I can say for myself is as soon a company is successful, I'm not that interested anymore.
No. It's just more repetitive, or
then
you get bored?
No. I mean, so in the past, when you see that something is flying, you need managers. I'm not a particularly good manager, I guess. I'm more like the founder. Yeah. And so that was for me then always a point where I said, hey, yeah, maybe I hand over or even sell. What we do now is we build companies always from scratch. We are always in the co-founder role. So I find this very exciting because, when a company like Avea is our supplement company, I would say they were extremely fast. It's a very good team. They are now break even after less than 2.5 years. Wow. Our role becomes more a strategic one. I'm still very interested and motivated in the company, but now I'm switching my attention to, for example, Mana. Mana is our senior co-living company. That's a bit earlier on, where I take a co-founder role and I really can build something. So I think that's why, as Marc said, for the next 10 years, I'm very interested of always being a founder.
But you also want to make yourself obsolete to a certain degree, that the companies run so well, they don't even need you anymore.
Yeah, that would be the goal. Yeah, but since we always build new companies, we always have to founder role again.
Yeah. There's always the next thing, the next topic.
So within the topic of longevity, we can stay early founders now for a very long time.
Yeah, and honestly, when we had this discussion in Tobias Schall in St. Moritz on a blank white paper, what we should do in the longevity field besides running the conference, right? That was one of the main drivers. By the way, Adrian Locher was also there, so he had maybe a certain influence about his own company building approach, right? But that's maybe the unique differentiator to a traditional investor or venture capitalist, right? So you build, as Tobias said, one company after the other, and you become maybe obsolete. But as soon as you have less time involvement in venture number one, you then have the airtime to start the next one. So literally, as a serial entrepreneur, you have the ideal model to replicate your passion for building companies. So that's why maybe that's the perfect setup and structure for people like us.
And you also really found what you enjoy doing and what you're good at. So you said you're probably not a good manager, but you're a good founder. So you really found your sweet spot.
Yeah. As I said, for me, the motivation always must be a combination of fun and purpose. And if money comes in as well, that's nice. Yeah,
of course.
But I mean, there being a founder, I definitely have fun. I like the challenge of building, of the obstacles at the beginning and like finding the right direction to go to. And the purpose we definitely have. So my parents are both above 70, and they have now packages of Avea, and they get personal trainers and stuff like that. You see an impact. I myself see an impact. So I drastically changed the way of living based on what I learned from our scientists. So and yes, I mean, this market is going to be an extremely big one. So I always say the longevity market will be the biggest or the second biggest after AI in the 21st century. And so if we build companies there, that might be very successful financially too.
Absolutely. And one last question before we sort of start wrapping up. You also have other things going on in your lives. Obviously, you have a family or you have investments in crypto or real estate. How do you balance all of that? By Maximon, of course, obviously being your main focus, but there are also so many other interesting topics in your lives. How do you balance that to not be distracted with all the other stuff that could be going on sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, on the one side, it's ideally complementary. And at the moment, besides Maximum, I don't have any operational involvement. So that's why, I mean, the distraction is limited, right? And private-wise, I mean, that's maybe also why the collaboration works that well. I mean, we have a little bit a different setup. I mean, we share many common things, but we also have a little bit a different setup. So in my case, I have a family with 2 kids. So that's definitely also a certain balance, also an additional challenge, right? But I see many additional benefits out of that because ultimately everything you do as an entrepreneur has maybe a higher purpose, helping the next generation, whatever. Yeah. And that's definitely something which, at least in my case, became more visible since I have a family. Mm-hmm. So then you ultimately also know either if it's Bitcoin or longevity, who's the ultimate beneficial group of all the things you do. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think with the flexibility you have as an entrepreneur, it's maybe, at least in my case, also an advantage to have additional things besides your pure business activities.
And also a big motivator, as it sounds.
Exactly. And I mean, ultimately, yeah, you know, the ultimate goal of what you do is to help humans, including your family and closest ones, to have a better life. And I think that's very fulfilling on the business side, but also on the private side.
Yeah. And how is that for you, Tobias? I think you still have at least a board mandate at Susie Partners, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Not anymore. Okay.
No, I mean,
but real estate investment or something.
For me,
like
it was
that?
also very clear that if I want to build Maximon, that needs to be the focus, and that's why I stepped down from various mandates. I also sold my shares in Crypto Finance Conference, for example. Crypto Finance Group we sold to Deutsche Börse anyway. Because I wanted to focus. And each mandate, be it as small as it can be, takes time.
Of course.
So I try to focus. This is for me very important. And what I said is I only do 2 things. I do investments in longevity with Maximon and privately investments in real estate. And there it's all about delegation. So I have a very good architect who takes care of my projects where I really... give input, but that's more a hobby. On a Sunday evening, we sit together and discuss the layouts of apartments we build or so. I think this works quite well. But for me, real estate is fun. I don't see this as work. It's creative. I like to see what is really being built, what you can touch afterwards. But for example, startup investments, I don't do. So it is Höhle der Löwen thing, which was a lot of fun. Takes far too much time to be combined with an operational role at Maximon.
Yeah, it's a very, very clear statement, and then the decision. You know. Yeah. So, if you look a bit into the future, what are the current predictions from your side for the longevity topic? Where are we heading?
Yeah, I'm still being in this longevity bubble. Sometimes a bit surprised how many people think that's just another hype, and it's scientifically not backed. So I think that means we are still early. And like in other fields, that's the most exciting part, because if everybody shares your views, you know, you're maybe now at the stage where you have to do something else. But I think in the next 1 to 2 years, and I mean, you can see it already in the media, but you will have the understanding that longevity, extending the human health span, will become something, maybe the biggest industry we ever had so far, because everybody is affected and or ideally also interested in it. And that's why I think we're at a very unique, interesting tipping point. And the things we build will also accelerate and become far more tangible for many people, which maybe don't really understand yet what this whole longevity thing really means.
It sounds like there's a big, important wave heading our way in that regard.
Yeah, and you always have the early movers and a little bit the ones who are interested in new exciting topics, but that's normally a very small audience. And I think it will need some more time. And I mean, with our clinic and some of our activities, we will broaden up the tangible use cases for real-world problems we solve with longevity-related products and services. But I think that's quite clear and quite close ahead of us.
Yeah. And Tobias, you mentioned AI before. That's another very hot topic at the moment. Is that something that is interesting to you, or even any regrets that you didn't enter that potentially even bigger market?
Oh, no, I don't think we don't enter. We do enter it. Not with all our companies, but with some. For example, Biolytica, that's our, you could say, health data company where we assemble all health data, your full genome, epigenome, microbiome, proteomics, up to wearable data. So we really can build a digital health twin of you. And there we are working on the topic of AI, because what we want to do is that we get better and better personalized recommendations, what you can do for your longevity. And that's coming out of the data. So we look very carefully at what can be done with AI. We use AI in HR. Last year we had 10,200 something applications. I mean, totally crazy. Yeah? That shows how well Maximon is known in the market.
Right.
Now we have 3 people in HR. They also have to do headhunting for our firms. They don't have time to read through 10,200 applications. Yeah. So what did they do? They installed ChatGPT. Yeah. So I think our focus is maybe not AI, but AI is overlapping with everything. I mean, I don't know any industry where in the next 10 years you will not have an impact of AI.
Yeah. Fantastic. So to wrap up today, I also want to ask you some rapid fire questions. I'm going to start with you, Marc. What is your favorite longevity hack?
The shortcut, definitely supplements, eye-opening, and just something I have to recommend everybody. And that's why we also have Avea tackling this issue. And then maybe the more well-known one where I have to work on is sleep.
Yeah. Which one is it for you, Tobias?
I think biggest impact I saw with the right diet.
Yeah.
So not so much eating less, but when you eat and what you eat had a big impact on my health. I also take certain supplements, of course, also from Avea. And what I also like, and I do now since close to a year, is every morning take a normal hot shower and then 1 minute ice cold. Yeah. And trust me, in the first 10 days, that's really uncomfortable. but now, if I don't do it, I miss it. Yeah. And what I can say is I often had a flu or a cold or so. And at least I can say, well, I still sometimes have one, but far less dramatic, much shorter. So my immune system seems to get better with that as well.
Nice. Marc, entrepreneur or investor?
Definitely entrepreneur. And if you're an investor, then ideally an entrepreneurial investor.
Exactly. Tobias, beer or wine?
Yeah, more wine, I guess. I mean, you could argue that red wine has resveratrol, not in enough quantity. So that's
just an excuse.
A bad excuse. No, but I do like wine a lot. Yeah.
Marc, trade sale or IPO?
I think IPO has a more appealing side effect, especially you can maybe still be involved in a more long-term way, right?
Is that a potential scenario for Maximon one day?
I think Maximon, we build a structure because it's fully financed by ourselves, which is open-end. So, at Maximon itself, we don't have an exit path, at least not at this stage, but definitely for all our ventures.
Nice. And Tobias, St. Moritz or Zurich?
Yeah, St. Moritz.
Yeah, clear choice.
More sunshine, I think, for longevity, being in the mountains is great. And I really like St. Moritz. So.
Amazing. Tobias, Marc, thank you so much for stopping by here at our studio, for all these valuable insights. All the best with what you're building, and I'm sure you're going to be back here soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
All the best to you too.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.